Hello, Belize. Hi, good afternoon, Belize. I'm Martine King, a mental health practitioner and an emotional therapist. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Today is World Autism Day, and I would love to send lots of love and support and celebrate all those along the spectrum and all those who love and care for them each day. I am happy to be a part of the awareness campaign today, and thank you to Christy for allowing me to be a part of this. As you mentioned earlier in what you shared, it's not directly related, stress management, to autism awareness, but stress is in everything we do each day, and especially if you are a parent of a child along the autistic spectrum, I know that it can be stressful, and of course for the those along the spectrum as well, it's very stressful. So thank you all for joining me. So let's talk a little bit about stress management and what that means. Stress gets a pretty bad reputation. And I'm not saying it's not a deserved reputation, because when you listen to the World Health Organization or any other health organization that talks about the illnesses that are globally killing us, stress is usually a precursor or one of the triggers that can make it worse or might even have started it. So stress plays a huge role in our everyday lives, and to an extent that it really is, when they say that stress can kill, that is so true. And never before have we as a society, and I'm talking before COVID-19, which we'll get to in a little while, never before have we been so stressed out as human beings. There's so much information to attend to. We're so busy with work and building our careers and taking care of our families and just trying to balance everything. We are super stressed out. Now remember, I haven't even added on COVID-19 to this as well, right? We're just talking about quote unquote normal everyday stress. So stress has a pretty bad reputation, and I think in many cases it's due. I think what's really important here though is that there is a lot that we can do to help manage your stress and to help cope with it, which is really at the end of the day the most important thing. So let's first start off though with what is stress. I'm going to every now and again move my screen to show you a PowerPoint. I am not as tech savvy as I'd like to be, and that was definitely causing me stress earlier today. But nonetheless, I figured this might help somehow. So if you see me do that, it's because it's a little video or a PowerPoint or a graphic that I'd like you to see throughout this conversation. So now, what exactly is stress? First of all, stress is a completely and totally natural response. In fact, we need stress to ensure that we keep ourselves alive. So if we as human beings feel that anything is a threat, is challenging us, and that we need to keep ourselves safe, that we need to protect ourselves, the stress response is triggered. So by no means do we want to get rid of stress. By no means is stress within itself bad. The stress response is helpful and it has a purpose. Right? So for example, let's say you're crossing the street and then all of a sudden this car comes and it's flying towards you and you freak out and you run out of the way. That's a stress response, and you're getting the hell out of there. Suppose the stress response wasn't there and you just sort of stood there, or you didn't do anything to really protect or defend yourself. So again, the stress response is really important. It's natural. It's the way the brain and the body works together to protect us, right? So what happens when this response is triggered? It can be triggered by, oh my gosh, I'm running late to work, or oh my gosh, a is coming at me. There's so many things that can trigger the stress response. What happens then? So hormones are released. Specifically, the more common ones, adrenaline is released and cortisol is released. And what that does is that the brain has detected danger. It's like, okay, there's stress, there's a threat, there's something happening, and I need to protect myself. Now, we may not consciously think it like that, but that's what the brain and body are doing before we even realize it. So the stress response is triggered, and these stress hormones are released into our body. What happens? Our heart starts to pump a whole lot faster. And think about it, when you're scared or anxious, if you notice, you find that your heart is beating way faster than it usually does. You might even start to sweat, The other thing that happens is that our breathing changes and we start to do a shallower, we breathe more quickly than we normally would for sure, right? And again, what the body is doing is it's physiologically getting ready to defend itself. So the blood starts now to flow down to our lower body. And the reason for that is that we're getting prepared to fight. And I literally think about it this way. It's like we're standing like this. And again, this is not consciously. It might be happening unconsciously that the body is getting ready. And imagine, so the heart is beating, the blood is going to the lower part of our body because that's the part of our body that we need. It's where the larger muscles are, and it's that part of our body that we need tensed and ready, because we are either going to fight this threat or we're going to flight, meaning we're going to evade it as much as possible. So those are two of the things that the stress response is trying to do. So a threat is perceived by us, the brain and body. The stress response is triggered by the brain. These hormones are released, and then we are getting ready to, okay, am I going to fight this, which means I need my muscles ready and my heart and my breath and everything going? Or even if I'm going to evade this, I might need all those muscles and all of that energy to evade this as well. So that's what's happening. Now, that's useful again because I need to get the hell out of here, or I need to find a solution to this threat. I need to get rid of this threat. So this is all very useful that our body and brain would work together to have a stress response. So to a certain extent, well, not to a certain extent, the process itself or natural reaction to threats, the stress response, is super important and super useful. And so we need it. And without it, we would really be in danger. Now, as with everything else, too much of a good thing then becomes a bad thing. And the idea is that, okay, the stress spikes. We attend to what we attend to. In fact, we can be even more productive when there's stress. So think about it. You have a deadline for a project. And all of a sudden, you're like, uh-oh, it's due in one day. And we start to work. Right? Your kid gets in trouble and they have your attention now, and you're like, uh-oh, okay, I need to do something now. So this release of these hormones and our body preparing for this is useful for us to be able to be productive and to get things done. And so I want to show you this, the first slide that I have here. Oh, that's not going to work. 1 second. Let me just figure out how to flip this. Okay. Oh, there we go. I hope you. But basically what we're looking at here, if you look at performance here, this is performance at 0 and it goes up. This is your level of stress and it goes that way. So here we're pretty calm, and our performance, the pressure that we're feeling, you know, is within the 0 realm, the calm realm, we'll call that. As the level of stress goes up, so does our performance. And where we want to be our most productive is in eustress, which is here in the middle. Notice level of stress and performance up here. We're peaked here. This is where, as human beings, the stress is motivating. It helps us to get things done. It reminds us, oh, I have a deadline. Or it reminds us, you know what, I need to go stock up on groceries because we might have to stay in the house for a very long time. It motivates us to wash our hands. So this is a type of stress that we would like to have. It goes up, we're productive, there's a state of rest. Now notice here, if the level of stress continues and continues and continues, we go into distress, and performance then starts to decline. At this point, we are overwhelmed. There are so many emotions that we are no longer being productive, and we're living fight or response in the stress response. And the idea is that there's stress. We deal with it, it's lowered, we continue, life brings another challenge, and there's this sort of up and down, but you do not want the stress to become chronic. So yes, we need the stress response, but when it becomes very dangerous to us is when it's chronic and we are not managing that stress. Now imagine this, the cortisol, the adrenaline, if you don't manage your stress, continues to be there in your body and in your brain, and your body is continuously in this state of there's a threat, there's something I have to do. So that's again called the fight or flight response. And you'll see this here. We need this response to keep us alive. It's how we survive. But if we continuously and over long periods of time remain in the fight or flight, we are taking away the energy from the body that it needs, for example, to help our immune system. So let's take, for example, imagine this high blood pressure. You're in the fight or flight stress response all the time, right? Your heart's beating faster than it usually does. The blood flow is going more to your muscles. Your digestive system has been slowed down. There's not as much coming into your bloodstream and into your brain. All of that just continues to go on if the stress response remains chronic or if it's not managed. All that energy that could be used to help strengthen our immune system, to help our white blood cells fight invaders when they come in, are now being used for this fight or flight. Now, when we need it, but we don't, we're putting all our reserves and our energy and all the organs and all this extra work on our body. So it's really important for us to be aware that yes, the stress response is important. We need it for our survival and our well-being, so we are productive. But if we remain in that stress response and it's never shut down or given a break, and we're never allowing ourselves to have those stress hormones reduced in our body, then that's when stress becomes a killer. So I'm just going to move over here. Patience, please. Okay, hi. I'm back again. So, to repeat that, stress is good. Too much stress is not good. So we need to be aware of, okay, what's happening to me right now? I know this is natural. I know that we need stress to motivate us, but where am I right now? Am I overly stressed? And what are the things that are overly stressing me, right? So what does this look like emotionally? So emotionally, when the stress response is triggered, we have increased anxiety, irritability. The males tend to display more anger and irritability. We have sadness, powerlessness, a sense of confusion, definitely many times a sense of aggression, and just a sense of possibly feeling out of control. So emotionally, when the stress response is triggered, there are a lot of emotions happening all at the same time. When it comes to behavior, some people become withdrawn. Some people become impulsive. Some people don't sleep well, or they sleep too much or too little. Very fearful, not able to make decisions. Some of us start smoking or drinking excessively, eating excessively, or not eating at all. With our children, we might find ourselves shouting at them some more, or maybe even hitting them. We are become impatient with each other in our relationships. So there are a lot of behaviors that change as a result of prolonged exposure to response. So we're more irritable, we're more sad, we're more anxious, and that leads to a change in behavior, like how we sleep, how we interact with each other, this fearfulness. Our body, we can get headaches quite often. We can get body aches and pains. Our immune system is lowered, so we're more likely to catch things like the flu or anything else, any other things that may be going around. Our memory can oftentimes be affected because of these stress hormones in our body, and the body continuously looking for danger. The things that we see in our everyday don't stay in our memory as long because we're continuously going, something is wrong, right? So you might not be able to sleep. The indigestion might be there. Your entire digestive system might be messed up. We get nausea, we get headaches. I think I've mentioned that already, okay? So now add to that, this is on the quote unquote normal circumstances. Now add to that this world crisis that we are going through. And I don't know about you all, but I've obviously never been through anything like this before. I think the only other time I came to anything close like this was when we would have a hurricane coming and you'd have to lock up and stay home or go somewhere and stay locked for a couple of days. Nothing even close to this, right? So now add what our normal life stresses are, and now add this, that we're all really scared. So our stress response is at a heightened level. It's on full on alert, and we need it to be at alert. We need this stress response because this stress response is saying, you know what? I'm going to fight. I am going to get through this whole COVID virus thing, and I'm going to do this. And so we've prepared. We're locking ourselves in our houses as much as we can. We wash our hands. We do all the things that we can do. In most cases, this is what we're doing, right? And that's what the stress response is about. We need that increase in adrenaline to give us the energy and the focus that we need to get things done to protect ourselves. Having said that, because we don't know what is going to happen, we don't know how long we're going to be in social isolation, we don't know what's going to happen to our companies and our jobs and our children in school. There's so much uncertainty and so much that we don't know. This is what could become chronic stress, because this is very real for all of us every day. And we have reason to be anxious and scared and afraid and uncertain. And so what do we do with that? So I'll give you an example. I had someone say to me, I feel really afraid because I have a susceptibility to respiratory infections, and I'm really afraid that I'm going to die, and I'm an older person, and so this is really very scary to me. What can I do? And that was very difficult for me to answer, because the truth of the matter is that person is doing the best that he can. He has isolated himself, great, and is being very strict with it. But the truth is, he is of the age where he's more susceptible to the virus based on what the information we've been getting. He is, on top of age, susceptible to respiratory illnesses. He knows this from his past. And so for me, my answer to that was expect to be afraid. Expect to continue to be afraid, and to allow those feelings of fear and uncertainty to be there. But also know that you are doing the best you can. You are taking all the precautions you have done already. Accept those feelings. Continue to take those precautions. Do things which I'll get into a little bit later, like deep breathing, taking walks in your garden, playing with your pets if you have pets, writing down your fears. There is no quick fix to this. It's really about managing and coping, especially when we're not quite sure what's going to happen. And so again, there's a part of me that hates to say that, because, you know, there's the idea that you want to just fix things. But when it comes to this and responding to threats in our environment, which is, for example, the COVID-19, the best we can do is manage and cope with the stress response. So what we would like to do is to be able to stay in stress. Remember the curve I showed you earlier? We want to stay in stress where we are at our best, where we're most productive and still somewhat rational. We do not want to stay in distress. Now, that's not to say that sometimes you're not going to feel distress, but that's where we have to do the work to get ourselves where we're in stress. Where, yes, we feel anxious, yes, we feel uncertainty, yes, we feel all of those feelings, but we're actively doing things to help ourselves manage this stress. So I want to talk a little bit about what that would look like. And this is particularly important because one of the guidelines that has been recommended is that we try to build our immune system. And we already know, based on what I shared earlier, that if we stay in distress, if we do not manage the amount of cortisol and adrenaline in our bodies and the increased heart rate and the oxygen and the blood flow going to our legs, we are taking away energy and work that can be put into helping to boost our immune system. So this is not only mentally, but this is physically. And right now we need our immune systems to be as strong as possible. So let's talk about the things that we can do to help manage, and I say that word a million times, to help manage our stress response. Believe me, we're all in our stress response right now because this is what it's for, to alert us, to protect ourselves. So what do we do now? So I want to take a look at this, or I'd like you all to take a look at this. Just 1 second. I'm going to put this up on the site when we're done. But in the meantime, oh wait. So this is literally a self-care list. And you'll notice it talks about emotional self-care, practical self-care, physical self-care, spiritual self-care, and mental self-care. Now, I know you probably can't see this very well, and some of these are going to be a little bit harder to do since we're now in self-isolation. But nonetheless, think about that. How can you take care of yourself each day into these categories and do that? And your partners or your older children to do this as well. I think we probably have the time to do that. How can you do that? And for those of you who still have to go to work, maybe this is something those at home can do as well. So I'll post this later on, but I just wanted you to see that this is an exercise that you can do individually or as a family, and I think it can be really helpful to separate it into these different spheres, right? To kind of have a grasp on how to do that. Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up now with some tips, and I like to use my 5 fingers to help me remember. The first thing is, if you're feeling stressed, and I bet we all are right now, feelings of increased anxiety, of panic, then how are you thinking? We want to think in a way that's helpful to us. You will have panic thoughts, you will have scarier thoughts than usual, but if you find that in particular some thoughts are really stressing you out, get a paper or in the notes on your phone, just write them out. Get them out of your mind and write them out. Or talk to somebody you trust and say, hey, these are some of the things that have me really worried right now. And then go, okay, what can I do about these? And those that you can't do much about, which I think is the case for many of us, then we have to let them go. Know that they're gonna be, that it's gonna worry you. Know that it's gonna produce anxiety, but also know that you're doing the best that you can do. And remember, just because we think a thought doesn't mean that that thought is true. So that's the first one. How are you thinking? How are we feeling? So accept whatever it is you're feeling. If you expect to not feel anxious whatsoever or not to have these moments, like I'll be doing the dishes and all of a sudden this wave of panic sort of comes and I feel really, really scared. Your first notion might be to find a way to get rid of those feelings. I'd like to challenge you to do the opposite, which would be to say, okay, no, I'm just going to stay with this panic, this awful feeling, and you'll note that it goes away more quickly that way. So it's like, yeah, I have reason to be panicked. I allow myself to feel panicked or anxious or angry or distressed, and then I let it go. So name that emotion and allow space for that emotion to be there. One thing that really, really helps a lot is deep breathing. You can go on YouTube or anywhere and you can find so many resources to show you how to really deep breathe. So remember I said that when the stress response is triggered, one of the things are the shallow breaths, and that's breathing from our chest. What we really want to get the most oxygen into our system and into our brain is to take deep breaths. And when the oxygen detects, when the brain detects, increased oxygen, it then decreases the level of serotonin and cortisol that it is releasing into the body. And that's what we want. So deep breathing is super important. Of course, exercise is super important. Whether that's just taking a walk in your yard or your living room, whether that's exercising, it's dancing, it's doing jumping jacks, whatever it is, if it's jogging in place, whatever it is that you can do that is movement that can release dopamine and serotonin, please do that. It's super important. Even if it's 5 minutes a day, please do that. Feelings come in waves. Sometimes they're huge, sometimes they're small. Give them space. You'll note that if you allow them space, the big waves come and then they go. The little ones come and then they go. And that's the idea. Right now, with uncertainty, we are worried, and so we are definitely more alert. So allow space for those feelings. So that's how are you feeling? How are you thinking, your thoughts? How are you feeling? And the other one is social connection. So we want to be connected, but I would say please, please, please monitor your device time. Make sure you have downtime as well, just for you or just for the people that are physically present with you. Because with screen time, our brain is overly active as well, and the brain needs some rest. And yes, we want to be in contact with everybody, but we don't need to be in contact 24/7. And we certainly don't need to be watching news 24/7. Choose your sources. Make sure you're up to date during a certain period of the day, and then let it go. So I'm keeping track. Thoughts, feelings, social connection, spirituality. Find purpose in all of this. How can you connect to this? Why is this happening? What purpose can you find in it that can motivate you each day? I'm sure if you have kids and they're asking, You might want to figure out what your stance on this is, meaning why things like this happen and why this is happening to us, and be able, it might not be with all certainty, but it's certainly useful to say, okay, I am going to find meaning in this, and use that every day to help yourself as we get through this and the days go on. So lastly then, is a review of that. Your thoughts, your feelings, your social connection, and your spirituality, whatever form that might take. So I would say, one, remind yourself that the stress response is important. We need it to survive. The fight or flight is necessary, but we need to manage the stress that we're going through right now through exercise, through taking the time to touch base with ourselves and say, okay, you know what? What's happening to me right now? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? How am I behaving? If I'm shouting at my kids too much, then maybe I need to take a pause during the day and just get some alone time, even if that means putting them on a screen or giving them a book or giving them something to draw. Find that time for you to breathe and to take care of yourself. We are really resilient, and I have no doubt that we're going to get through this. I think management is going to be really important. Please take a look online. You can find meditation, you can find deep breathing, you can find at-home exercises. I remember when I lived in the UK and it was too cold to go out and exercise. There's a video online that I walked 4 miles in my living room every day. Just literally, and you'd think that was boring. Well, it kind of was boring, but the structure and just being able to know that I had walked 4 miles and the dopamine that was released because of that really helped me a lot. Also, we thankfully have beautiful weather. Go outside, sit outside, look at the trees, pay attention to the flowers and all the things that we may have been too busy before to pay attention to. Read a book, even if you don't like to read, maybe challenge yourself to read. There's so many things that we can do to have little breaks that allow us to not be completely stressed all the time. So I could talk about this forever, but I'm going to leave it there. I hope I covered all the bases, but I'd like to open up now for you all to ask questions. Please let me know any doubts, questions, comments, anything at all, please. Actually, though, before you all go, I have a favorite video. I almost forgot to show this to you all. So I'm going to show it to you because I think it really sums up what I explained there. And it's kind of learned that I can only do it this way. So here we go.
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger recently? Maybe you haven't. But the stress response you feel when you are late to work, or the growl your stomach makes when you haven't had anything but an energy bar and coffee in the morning, is the same stress response we had when we were cavemen. That stress response is called fight or flight. Grump is a real-life caveman. He goes to work hunting saber-tooths and rabbits for his family. Unfortunately, the saber-tooth chases Grump on occasion, and his physical and emotional stress levels go way up. When this happens, Grump's body's intelligence kicks in to help him escape. His heart rate goes way up, his blood pressure spikes, more adrenaline is produced, and the body moves the blood away from the digestive tract and into the muscles, as digesting food isn't a priority at that moment. Grump eventually does escape and rests at home, and after 15 to 20 minutes, his body resets and begins to operate normally again. Now, your body doesn't know the difference between running from a saber-toothed tiger or rushing your kids to school. Your body's stress response is triggered in both situations, so your blood pressure, heart rate, and food digestion is the same as Grump's when he's running away from a tiger. Situations could happen every day in our culture. The difference between you and the caveman is the caveman was able to relax in his cave soon after he finished stressing out. So for the whole day, the caveman would stress the duration of a hunt, which would last maybe an hour. You, on the other hand, have to deal with the stress of racing your kids to school, traffic, work, relationships, and everything else that life constantly throws at you. Plus, add in the constant chemical stress that comes from the unhealthy foods we eat, and it's like you are running from the saber-tooth all day long. The solution is to build your own cave. You have to build your own cave every day, and it means finding some peace in the pileup of traffic while driving to work. It means going to bed on time instead of staying up late binging on your favorite TV shows. It means taking some time to go outside and do some relaxing work instead of locking yourself up in your office. Otherwise, this chronic stress will open you up to most diseases because your immune system will tank and a lack of nutrients that your body needs due to not being able to digest your food properly. Add to that the fact that your adrenals, which are the glands that sit atop your kidney and decide where your hormones go, are so active with the abundance of stress you experience and put into your body, you will develop adrenal fatigue. Put all this together, and now you know why stress is the start of all disease processes. How can we make our fight or flight more effective? How can we turn it off when we don't need it and bring it up when it's necessary? Ask yourself what you are putting in your body for energy. Your body is probably asking your brain for those artificial stimulants you gave, like coffee, processed sugars, or genetically modified foods, because it's confused on why the adrenals aren't filling up like they used to. You have sucked your adrenals dry of hormones that didn't need to be active in the first place. That's huge because we are taking a finite source and sucking it dry. What people may not know is that a lot of things trigger the fight or flight response. Emotional stresses, eating unhealthy foods, overreacting to life's daily challenges, going through tough emotional times, all trigger fight or flight. However, that leaves a lot of areas where we can improve it. So if this video has successfully stressed you out with all the info it's loaded you up with, you should take a minute to relax. At least you don't have a tiger running after you. If you always put limit on everything you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. There are no limits.
Okay, I'll post a link for that video later on as well. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you, Sahara and Viola, for your vote of confidence. So the question is, any tips to recognize when your young ones are getting overly stressed? Well, coming from someone who has an almost 5-year-old and a 6-year-old who are continuously bickering, I realized today, well, from yesterday, that a part of this increased bickering between the two of them is probably because that's how their anxiety is manifesting. And so what I've started to do is making sure that they have enough downtime. So we're going to create a corner in the room where they can go and lie and they can read a book or do something quiet like a puzzle, or eat drawing, coloring, something that is soothing. And then I also make sure that I let them know that they are safe. The reason we're staying home is to be safe and we have to wash your hands. And so I explain to them in a language that they can understand what is happening, and they ask questions and I answer those questions. And so look out for if their behavior has changed. Are they more irritable? Are they throwing more tantrums? It really depends on the age of the child. Or are they asking a lot of questions? If they're asking a lot of questions, that's good because they're trying to understand what's happening. So make sure you take the time to sit and answer those questions. I also will post a link later on that has, it's a little cartoon to help the kids understand what's happening in the world with COVID-19 right now. But just look for any different behavior, any increase in tantrums or irritability or feeling scared. And keep an eye on them, talk to them, reassure them. And also, the better able as parents that we are to manage our stress, to deep breathe and to take our breaks and to reflect on how we're feeling and to be able to regulate our emotions, the better and the calmer the kids will feel. So our energy is super important in helping our children to feel safer. Oh, and one last thing, as with adults, with kids, get them running, get them doing exercise, get them doing crafts, keep them busy enough to burn that energy. And then the other side of that would be doing calming activities. So guys, I'm not seeing any more questions. So I would like to thank you all, and please today talk about autism, raise awareness, let everyone know how beautiful these kids are and those who have become adults. And please take a pause, check in with yourself, check your stress, try to figure out what might be causing extra stress every day, and take a deep breath and do your exercises. Thank you very much. Bye.